figured puff sleeves would be appropriate. Hello my friends, my name is AJ and welcome back to my book nook and welcome back to another Canadian author spotlight. It has been a while since I've done one of these, but I'm back, I've got a few planned, and I am excited to go through them. Today, we are going to be talking about Louise Michalos and her book, Marilla Before Anne. So Louise Michalos is a Canadian author from Halifax, Nova Scotia. She is the second youngest from a family of 9 and now lives with her husband in Bedford, Nova Scotia. She grew up and has continued to live her life in the small Atlantic Canadian communities that are featured in her novel as well as are celebrated in the original Anne of Green Gables series. And she actually did not start writing until her retirement, and Marilla Before Anne, which just came out in 2021, is her first novel. So let's talk a little bit about what the novel is about. So Marilla Before Anne is a story of the beloved character of Marilla Cuthbert from Anne of Green Gables and provides a bit of a backstory for how she became the way she is. It starts off with Marilla in Avonlea as a very happy-go-lucky young woman who is in love with a shipbuilder from Halifax named William, despite the fact that her controlling mother wants her to marry John Blythe, a successful businessman in Avonlea. Through a series of tragic losses, Marilla goes from a happy and optimistic young woman to becoming the guarded woman who is well acquainted with grief that we see in her later years. Now, first of all, I want to talk a little bit about the format of this novel. All the chapters are fairly short. I don't think there's really any that are longer than 10 pages. And I really enjoyed that. I honestly prefer books that have many short chapters. I think it provides an easier way to stop if you have to stop in the middle. If you're someone like me and you can get distracted very easily, it's definitely good as well. And I honestly find that it helps me to keep my attention longer because I feel like I've accomplished something. It also provides a few timelines across the beginning of each chapter. They will have dates as well as locations because it does take place sometimes in Avonlea and PEI, sometimes in Halifax. And it just lets you know where this is happening and when this is happening in the timeline. Personally, I didn't find that very useful because I tended to just skip them, and by the time I got to the next chapter, I'd already forgotten when the previous one had taken place. But if that's something that you're into, if you like to keep track of that kind of stuff, then it'll be very helpful to you, and I liked having the option to do so. I found that this was a very well done prequel for the character. A lot of times prequels for kind of side characters are often not very well done. I'm Looking at You, Han Solo movie. That was an awful prequel and I will never stop complaining about it. A lot of times the trap that they fall into is that the character will learn a lesson that they learned in the original series, or you see them go through character development that you have already seen them go through before, and it's like, did you just forget that character development? And this definitely does not do that. We actually see her as a very different person than who we're used to seeing her as in the Anne of Green Gables series. And so getting to see that development of her character from this very young and happy and very similar to Anne character actually into the sort of guarded older woman that we have come to know is very well done, and I really enjoyed having that actually written out. And my goodness, is this book sad. I was reading through it and I actually got through quite a bit of it one evening, and every single few chapters it was like something new, bad thing would happen. I was like, oh my gosh, they just can't catch a break. I'm not gonna spoil anything, but I'm just gonna say a lot of people die. But honestly, I think that it gives a really good backstory for Marilla's relationship with Anne. Marilla is obviously, a bit more hardened, and Anne is very energetic and imaginative and wants to go out and have fun and wants to find love. And I think that that was a really good balance of showing how she would see herself in Anne and would want to protect her from the heartbreak and the grief that she has gone through. And so I thought that that made a lot of sense, and I thought that was very well done. One thing I will say, I would have liked to see more of Marilla's friendship with Rachel. So Rachel Lynde is another character from Anne of Green Gables who is Marilla's best friend at the beginning of this novel, and as it sort of goes on, they sort of grow apart. And I felt like we really didn't get to see much of that. I would have liked to see more of her friendship with Rachel at the beginning. I felt like we didn't really get to see much of her. I also would have liked to see more of their friendship sort of slowly dissolving into sort of a passive friendship. Because there are so many time skips, the plus side of that is that we get to cover a lot of content. The downside of that is that we actually don't get to see a lot of details. We get to see a big picture, not the small things. We are told that they've sort of grown apart. They don't really talk as much anymore, but we don't actually get to see examples of that. So that's something that I would have liked to see more of. All right, so I actually want to talk a little bit about the ending of this book. It's something that I was very shocked by, and also something that I was a little bit disappointed in. And because it's obviously the ending of this book, I don't want to spoil anything in the middle, and it is a very big plot point. So I'm just letting you right now, this is going to have massive spoilers for the end of the book. If that's not something that you're into, if you're thinking that you might want to pick this up and you don't want to have it spoiled for you, I highly recommend skipping to the end. I put a timestamp for you down below. Okay, so hopefully everyone who's left here should be only the people who are okay with having the ending spoiled or who have read the book already. So obviously the end features Marilla discovering that Anne, the daughter of her daughter, whom she had to give up, is alive and is now trying to contact her because she knew her mother. That was an interesting choice, and I was not a fan of it. I was sort of going into this with the idea that this was meant to be a sort of true to the original novel's backstory for Marilla. It comes across once you get to the end as more of an alternate storyline. If we're going by the backstory of this novel, Anne is no longer just a random orphan girl who gets a chance to go to PEI. She's no longer the girl that was sent by mistake instead of the boy that they wanted. Now she has contacted Marilla before. She knows who Marilla Cuthbert is. She has been requested by name to join under the guise that it was a mistake and they had actually asked for a boy, but Anne is told that she is chosen by name, but must act as if she doesn't know. I didn't feel like that made a lot of sense. Up until that point, I was like, yeah, okay, so maybe, Marilla, is very guarded because she sees a lot of young herself in Anne and she wants to try and protect Anne, but it kind of lost me when it became that Anne actually was her granddaughter. I think it's an interesting take. I think it's an interesting twist on it, but I would have preferred that it was more clear that, oh, this isn't meant to be sort of super accurate to the way the book happens. It's meant to be like a reimagining of what Marilla's backstory could have been, rather than I'm going to present this as if it actually were. Which is fine, obviously. I'm okay with it being sort of a reimagining. I still think it's a really great book, but it just sort of felt weird to me because I had been going into it under the impression of a specific story, and it came out being something completely different. Okay, so welcome back, all my non-spoiler people. So what are my final thoughts? Overall, I thought that Marilla Before Anne is a very, very good debut novel. It's not perfect, obviously, but for a first novel, it's really well done. There are a few things that I would have liked to have a few more details on, and I wish that we had been a little bit more clear on whether it was meant to be a complete reimagining or whether it was meant to be more true to the original novels, but overall I thought that it was well done. It takes a well-known and well-loved character and provides a backstory to explain her personality, and it really makes you feel for all the loss and the grief that she goes through. Structure-wise, it's very light. It's a very easy read. It's very quick, not much you have to really think about in the terms of actually reading it, but the subject matter is very heavy, which is a very tough line to balance of easy structure, heavy material, but that is also done very well. It provides sort of an alternate storyline for what happens, and I imagine that if it were going to continue from this book into the Anne of Green Gables series, the Anne of Green Gables series would be slightly different than the way they actually were written. However, because of that difference, it means that you can pick this book up without having actually read Anne of Green Gables and without actually having known much about it. If you've never read it, which if you're Canadian, I'm sure you are, and if you're not, then hi, welcome. It reads like a different story completely. Obviously, there are characters and moments where you're like, ah, yeah, I know who that is. But if you didn't know who they were, it wouldn't really affect the story that much. But overall, a really well done first novel, and I can't wait to see what else this author does. But that is it for me today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, feel free to give it a thumbs up, and if you want to stick around and get notified when my next video is up, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And let me know in the comments below, have you read Marilla before Anne, or did this video make you want to read it? And do you have any suggestions for other lesser known Canadian authors that you would like me to cover in this series? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to have a conversation with all of you, but that is it for me today. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see all of you lovely people in the next video. Bye!